Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Paul David Thompson was born on May 23rd of 1938. As he explains in Book 1 of his life history, I was born at a very young age. I chose my birth to be at the St. Bernardine Hospital in San Bernardino, California, so I could be near my mother. She claims I was an easy birth, although not so easy to explain. I've never had any problem determining who my real father is, however. There has been some speculation that my name should not be Thompson. I think this idea is completely illegitimate. His quote, that's a quote from him. Paul knew at a very young age who his real father was, and he depended on him throughout his life. He felt his guidance, love, and protection throughout his life, and therefore never worried about who his earthly father really was. Paul's mother said that raising Paul was like weeks of humdrum, punctuated with moments of stark terror. That began when he was about 18 months old. He had an ear infection that moved into the bone around his ear, and high fever, and I guess they weren't using antibiotics so much at the time, and so when they finally got him to the hospital, the doctor said he was hours away from death, but they were able to remove the infected part of his bone and save his life. He had had a priesthood blessing in the meantime, and his mother felt that his life was saved for a special mission. At this time, when he was young, they were living in a rented house in Rialto, California, and a man called Uncle Herbie used to come and visit all the time. Paul and his older sister Beverly would get very excited when Uncle Herbie would come, because he would entertain them with music and song, and he would play the violin. One night, Paul and Beverly rode in the trunk of Herb's '39 Chevy Coupe along with their mom to Las Vegas, and Uncle Herb became Daddy Herb. And he asked Paul if he wanted to change his name to Cruis, which was Herb's last name, and Paul said, "No, I like Thompson better." A little later on, his mom and Daddy Herb separated, and Paul and Beverly went to live with their grandparents in Napa, California. Paul loved to play in the creek, and that ran along the bottom of the property, and he said he caught frogs, pollywogs, fish, and lots of trouble from his grandma, who had to take a switch to keep him from getting in the water all the time. It was here in Napa where he started school, he learned to read, and he was baptized and received his patriarchal blessing. His grandpa always used to dress up as Santa Claus, and he instilled a great belief in Santa Claus in Paul that he always had throughout his life, and which he's passed on to his children and grandchildren. They loved to go on vacation to the beach and to the giant redwoods. A little later, Paul's mom got back together with Herb, and they moved to Southern California. He had a 5th grade teacher named Mrs. Johnston, who was his very favorite teacher, and she loved art, which instilled a love of art in him as well, and he thinks that that's why he became a 5th grade teacher later on in his life, because of Mrs. Johnston. He attended Colton High School. He became president of the art club, and he spent hundreds of hours working on art projects and planning outings for the club. And any of you who know him know that that was one of his favorite things to do throughout his life, is projects and outings. In the summer, Daddy Herb would take the family to San Clemente Beach for 2 weeks at a time. That was one of their favorite vacations. And during one of these stays, Paul learned how to weave palm leaf hats. And he was wearing one of those hats when they went to Disneyland on opening day. And there was a booth across from the jungle ride called Hawaiian Abe's. As my dad walked by, Hawaiian Abe said, "Where did you get that hat?" And he says, "Well, I made it." He says, "How did you get it so tight?" And he says, "Well, I waited as it dried, I tightened it up." And he said, "Would you like a job?" And he offered him a job on the spot. And his parents approved, and so he was able to spend the next 2 summers while he was in high school working at Disneyland, the first 2 years it was open, and weaving hats. And through this, he was able to meet a lot of the celebrities that came through Disneyland. He met Marilyn Monroe, Debbie Reynolds, Milton Berle, and Walt Disney himself. So he really enjoyed that. After graduating from high school, he moved to Provo, Utah, and attended BYU. He was very interested in Spanish, and so he ended up taking 2 full years of Spanish, which was the reason he got called to Uruguay as a missionary. So he went to Uruguay and spent 2.5 years preaching the gospel in that beautiful country. He grew to love the people and the country and his companions. He served as a branch president and a counselor to the mission president while there. And as a member of the mission presidency, he got to travel all over Uruguay, Paraguay, and northern Argentina, which is what his mission covered at the time. He did see a lot of success as a missionary and was very pleased to see some of the people he baptized in leadership positions in the church there before he left. When he got home from his mission, he resumed his studies at BYU. And in his words, it all started with an invitation to dinner. Paul's apartment was invited by Barbara's apartment. Actually, it wasn't so normal. Barbara and Paul were waiting for the dinner to be served and read the funny paper together. They started a conversation that lasted over 50 years. He knew there was something about her that was special. They began to date and were married on December 20th, 1962 in the Idaho Falls Temple. After graduating from BYU, they moved back to a small basement apartment in Provo, and that basement apartment will always be remembered for the place that he received his letter to be drafted into the Army. He went to basic training, and during that time, my mom found out she was pregnant with me. And they waited for his assignment, and they found out it was going to be in Hawaii. So it turned out to be not so bad after all. They spent a couple years in Hawaii, and their first crowning achievement happened in Hawaii, and that's where I was born. So I spent my first 2 years in flip-flops and a diaper, probably. But when they moved back to the States, they moved to Ogden, where he got a job teaching. But he loved that. He put on several plays and just enjoyed that a lot. After that, he wanted to teach seminary, so he became a seminary teacher, and we moved to Pocatello, Idaho, where their second crowning achievement was born, my sister Miriam. And we were there for a couple of years, and then he decided to work for the church as a graphic designer, so we moved to Provo, where he worked in the art department of the church. As we lived in Provo there, Celeste was born there. We had to be closer to Salt Lake, but didn't want to be in Salt Lake, so that's when we moved to Alpine in 1972. He decided to go back to teaching school. During this time of teaching school, he taught 4th grade, and he found that it was hard to find material to teach Utah history. There were very few materials that he could find, and so he decided to start a newspaper, a weekly newspaper, and he called it the Utah Studies Weekly. And that paper became very popular in Utah with 4th grade teachers. And his sisters in Texas decided, well, if you can do it in Utah, we can try that in Texas. So they started the Texas Studies Weekly. And as a family looked at it and said, well, we think we can do this in other states as well. So the whole extended family got involved, and eventually those papers are now in all 50 states. And my brother-in-law, Ed, Celeste's husband, now runs the company, and it continues to grow and do well. We have several million kids reading that newspaper every week. So great accomplishment for him. When I was in high school, after many miscarriages, my mother was able to have another baby. So we had our little sister Laurel when I was a junior in high school, and I left on a mission. And while I was on my mission, my brother Travis was born. So they were able to have 5 children. I think they maybe wanted to have a few more than that, but they were very pleased and happy to have their 5 children, and we were pleased to be in their family. I just wanted to leave with you some of his thoughts. He wrote his life history in picture and verse, and it was a great Christmas gift to all of us children. A couple of years ago, he gave those all to us, and there are many experiences that he wrote there that just are typical dad. He had a great sense of humor, and he shared that with us a lot. I don't think I can ever remember a time when he was in bad humor.